If all that you adored, all that you pursued with trembling hands and sleepless nights, were revealed to be nothing but the tricks of nature's invisible hand, what would remain of your devotion? If the face that enchants you, the softness that consoles you, the tenderness that seems to rescue you from solitude, were unmasked as a mere instrument of the species, would you still kneel before it in worship? The figure of woman, endlessly sung in poetry, idolized in art, prayed to as mother, cursed as temptress, desired as bride, feared as widow, what is she in truth? An angel descending from heaven? A vessel of sin? Or neither, but rather the silent agent of life itself, the embodiment of nature's deepest and most merciless instinct, the preservation of the species at the cost of the individual. The brutal truth about women is not to be found in the shallow judgments of men who praise or condemn according to their mood. It is deeper, more tragic, and therefore more difficult to bear. Woman is not a mere ornament in man's theater of illusions, nor is she the weaker sex, as she has so often been called. She is strength itself, but not the strength of freedom or willful power. She is the strength of necessity, of endurance, of sacrifice. She is life's uncompromising guardian, her body the battlefield upon which existence renews itself, her mind bent to the rhythms of survival that man, in his vanity, calls beauty, charm, or mystery. What man calls love is but his own slavery to the species, and what woman calls affection is but the instinctual recognition of her role as vessel of continuity. Between them there is tenderness, yes, but beneath tenderness lies a chain forged by forces neither sex can break. The will to live, to reproduce, to perpetuate speaks through the smile of the beloved, through the blush of youth, through the sigh of longing. The individual believes he chooses freely, but he is chosen. He believes he loves, but he is compelled. What if beauty itself is a deception? What if every curve, every glance, every delicate feature that seizes the heart is nothing but a signal written by nature to secure reproduction? What if all our poems, our serenades, our vows of eternal fidelity are nothing but elaborate disguises for the blind command of life to go on? Consider, the grandeur of empires collapses, religions rise and fall, revolutions burn and fade into ash. Yet beneath these surface storms, the same old truth continues. Man seeks woman, woman bears child, child grows and repeats the cycle. Civilizations change costumes, but the same play is performed. And within this play, woman is both exalted and chained. She is revered as mother, yet her suffering in childbirth is unspeakable. She is admired as beautiful, yet beauty becomes a tyrant that binds her life to the expectations of others. She is described as delicate, but her endurance for pain and sacrifice surpasses man's. This is the paradox. Woman is both powerful and powerless, exalted and exploited, praised and constrained. So, let us strip away the veil. Let us not speak of romance as poets do, nor of sentiment as priests do, nor of equality as politicians do. Let us confront the essence. The brutal truth about women is the brutal truth about life itself, that each of us is born not for freedom, not for happiness, but for the service of an endless cycle we never chose. Woman reveals this more starkly than man, because her body, her fate, her suffering declare it without disguise. You who listen now, are you ready to face this truth without trembling? Or will you cling to the illusions of love songs and wedding vows, fearing to see what they conceal? The mask of beauty will fall, and behind it you will find not an angel nor a demon, but the blind, ceaseless, insatiable will the same. Will that speaks through hunger, through lust, through ambition, through every striving that never ends. Woman is its mirror, its chosen instrument, its reluctant strength, and to understand her is to understand the secret of life itself, that freedom is a dream and necessity is eternal. The stage of human existence is furnished with costumes, masks, and 1,000 decorations. We call them romance, family, custom, poetry, morality. They are the painted curtains behind which the machinery of life grinds without pause. Nowhere is this masquerade more seductive, more intoxicating than in the theater of sex. And here, woman appears at once as central figure and silent prisoner. To understand her role, one must strip the play of its dazzling scenery and listen for the iron wheels turning in the dark. The phenomenon begins with attraction. The sight of woman, the curve of her form, the lilt of her voice, these strike man like a spell. He experiences longing, exaltation, despair, joy, all in quick succession. He imagines himself in the presence of a divinity, a being whose existence promises deliverance from solitude, redemption from the monotony of self. Does he pause to ask why these particular features, these small traits of flesh and bone, so overwhelm his mind? Does he wonder why a flash of hair, the contour of a shoulder, the gleam of eyes should bend his entire existence toward pursuit? Rarely. He explains it to himself with the cheapest coin. I am in love. And in that simple phrase, he believes he has said everything, when in fact he has said nothing at all. For love is but the word we use to disguise necessity. Behind the fluttering of the heart is the iron fist of nature, commanding obedience. She has no pity for the individual, no concern for his peace, his plans, his dreams. She wants only her continuation, her endless renewal. Thus, she dresses up her command with sweet illusions. She makes the beloved seem irreplaceable, the object of infinite importance, though 1,000 such faces pass by in the streets every day. She makes the moment of desire feel eternal, though it vanishes like mist in the morning Sunday. In this way, man, who thinks himself rational, becomes nature's fool, carried by a storm he believes to be his own will. Woman, in this scene, is both agent and victim. From birth, her body is prepared as the vessel of reproduction. Her shape, her voice, even her moods, are attuned to the invisible purposes of life. She does not choose this. It is laid upon her as the gravity of her existence. When she enters youth, she becomes to man an emblem of beauty. But beauty is nothing but utility, veiled in ornament. The proportions that man praises, the freshness of skin, the delicacy of movement, all are signs that whisper to him, here the species will flourish. He mistakes these signals for transcendence, and thus his life begins to revolve around them. Yet while man is enchanted, woman is burdened. For every charm that wins admiration becomes also an expectation, a demand. She must maintain her allure, guard her appearance, cultivate her voice, lest she fall into the shadow of invisibility. Society magnifies this compulsion. Poets compare her to flowers, yet flowers wilt in a day. Painters immortalize her youth, yet youth flees like a thief in the night. And so she is caught in a cruel paradox. She is exalted for what cannot last, and when it fades, she is discarded as though she had failed her duty. What man calls romance is, in truth, a form of servitude. He kneels before her, brings gifts, writes verses, wages wars for her favor. But behind this apparent devotion lies not selfless love, but blind necessity. He serves the species when he believes he serves her. His devotion is a mask for his own compulsion, and her delight in it is bound to the recognition that she is desired not as an individual, but as the fleeting embodiment of a universal function. Both participate in the deception, both suffer from it, and both call it happiness. The phenomenon extends into every corner of social life. Families arrange marriages not for love, but for inheritance, alliances, the continuation of name and property. Religion surrounds woman with sacred images. The Virgin, the mother of gods, the goddess of fertility. Poetry weaves her into symbols of purity, of temptation, of salvation. Each image, each myth, each institution presses her into the service of the same old command. Life must go on. Man is chained by desire, woman by expectation, and together they perpetuate the endless cycle. Consider the peculiar fate that the feminine body carries. From her earliest years, woman is reminded of her difference. Her blood testifies monthly to her bondage to nature's rhythm. Her body announces readiness for childbearing long before her spirit may be prepared. And when she becomes mother, the suffering is twofold. She endures the pain of childbirth, and then the longer pain of care, sacrifice, worry, and eventual loss. For nature does not guarantee her reward, only her duty. The infant may thrive, or it may die. It may honor her or despise her. Yet she endures because she must. Her love is not chosen, but compelled, deeper than reason, stronger than resentment. Here again, what we call affection is the mask of necessity. Even outside the family, the phenomenon of woman in society is marked by paradox. She is revered as muse, yet rarely permitted as creator. She is idealized in songs, yet denied a voice in decisions. She is placed upon pedestals, yet the pedestal is itself a prison. This is the cruel duplicity of the social order, to elevate woman only in order to confine her. And yet, beneath all these roles and masks, she remains the same life's silent strength, bound to its service. Why then do men speak of women as fragile? What is fragile in her? Is it not man who falls in battle more easily, who wastes himself in ambition, who destroys himself in folly? Woman, by contrast, endures pain, sustains life, weathers abandonment, carries burdens. Her fragility is a myth invented by the very sex that cannot endure her trials. If she appears weak, it is only because the world has forced her into roles where endurance is mistaken for submission. But to expose the phenomenon fully, we must descend deeper still. Why does man exalt what enslaves him? Why does woman endure what consumes her? Because the will, that blind, insatiable force at the heart of existence, rules them both. She draws him because the species demands it. He pursues her because the species commands it. And both mistake this tyranny for freedom. The truth, then, is neither romantic nor cynical. It is not that woman deceives, nor that man is a fool. The truth is that both are victims of an older, deeper necessity. They are not free to choose, but only to play their roles. Man struts and declaims his passion. Woman sighs and accepts her burden. Behind them both, the will laughs, knowing it has achieved its end. Is it not striking how much of culture is built upon this phenomenon? Without the pursuit of woman, would men have built cities, written epics, fought wars? Without the endurance of woman, would life itself have continued through famine, plague, catastrophe? And yet, what does either sex gain from this colossal enterprise? Nothing. For after all the striving, all the sacrifices, all the illusions, the individual perishes. The will goes on, but the man and the woman vanish. They are used, consumed, discarded. Their joys were bait, their suffering the price. And so, the brutal truth about women is not that they are angels nor demons, nor superior nor inferior, but that they are the clearest mirror of life's merciless law. In them we see most plainly the bondage of the individual to the species, the sacrifice of freedom to necessity, the transformation of suffering into endurance. Ask yourself, when you see the young girl adorned for a festival, radiant in beauty, do you truly see her? Or do you see the species smiling through her, promising continuity? When you see the mother nursing her infant, exhausted yet tender, do you truly see her? Or do you see life itself, indifferent to her pain, commanding her devotion? When you see the old woman, her beauty faded, her children gone, her strength diminished, do you truly see her? Or do you see nature discarding what it has used, indifferent to her past, ready to begin again with another face, another body, another sacrifice? This is the phenomenon exposed. Woman, endlessly exalted, endlessly burdened, endlessly misunderstood. She is praised, adorned, worshipped, and at the same time forgotten, exploited, condemned. She is the eternal paradox of human life, necessary, central, yet denied her own freedom. And in this paradox, she embodies the cruelest lesson, that the individual exists only as servant of a will that does not care for individuals. The mask is now torn away. What we call woman, in the ordinary sense object of longing, symbol of purity, muse of poetry, is only the surface, the reflection shimmering upon the water. To step beyond the phenomenon is to sink beneath the surface, where the currents run deep and dark, where the light of illusion no longer penetrates. There, one meets the essence, the will. Blind, relentless, eternal, the will surges through all beings, and in woman it finds its most transparent instrument. The will to life is indifferent to the fate of the individual. It asks nothing about happiness, about justice, about fairness or dignity. Its only command is, exist, multiply, continue. To man, it speaks in the form of restless desire, ambition, hunger, sexual longing. To woman, it speaks as endurance, as sacrifice, as the endless rhythm of reproduction and care. Neither chooses these roles, for both are merely masks worn by the same inexorable force. Man believes himself hunter, conqueror, pursuer. But is it not rather he who is hunted? Who chooses his beloved freely? The poet sighs, I am drawn irresistibly to her. But the very phrase reveals the truth, irresistibly. That which cannot be resisted is not chosen, it is commanded. The sparkle in the eye, the curve of the figure, the softness of the voice, these are not inventions of the individual woman, but signals inscribed into her by the will, signs that announce to man the health, the fertility, the continuity of his line. He reads these signs not consciously, but instinctively, and he calls the compulsion they awaken love. Woman, too, does not love as an angel, free of calculation. Her inclinations, though clothed in tenderness, obey their own necessity. She does not choose her attractions arbitrarily. She is drawn to strength, to health, to resources, to the possibility of protection for her future offspring. She does not plan this consciously. The will plans it in her blood, her nerves, her instincts. Thus, when man believes he is wooing her, he is in truth being measured, weighed, tested by criteria older than civilization, deeper than reason. And so, both sexes deceive themselves. He believes he conquers. She believes she chooses, but both are merely instruments of the will. This is why love burns with such feverish intensity. Were it merely about pleasure, it would pass like hunger satisfied by a meal. But love, especially in its stormy, desperate, exalted form, is not about the happiness of the lover. It is about the future of the species. The lover, tormented by jealousy, intoxicated by hope, brought to despair by indifference, suffers as though the whole meaning of his life depended on possession of one particular person. Why such madness for one face among millions? Because in that union, the will sees the possibility of a child, a continuation of itself, a new mask through which it will continue to strive. The individual feels infinite importance in this passion, because the will lends him its voice, though he imagines it his own. Beauty itself, that most celebrated of illusions, reveals the hand of the will. The features we find beautiful are those that signal health, youth, fertility, strength. Symmetry whispers of genetic stability. Bright eyes betray vitality. The curve of hips, the softness of skin, the timbre of voice, all speak in a language older than thought. We admire beauty as if it were an ideal of the soul, but in truth, it is the mathematics of reproduction dressed in splendor. A woman praised for beauty is praised not for herself, but for the promise she carries of future life. This is why beauty tyrannizes women. It is not merely a matter of vanity or social fashion, but of necessity. She who lacks beauty feels herself diminished, not because she has lost something essential, but because she has lost the mask through which the will advertises its promise. Society cruelly amplifies this law, chaining her worth to her appearance, casting her aside as soon as youth fades. But the law itself comes not from men's cruelty, but from the will's demand that beauty remain a fleeting bloom. For only when it is fleeting can it keep the cycle moving. Fresh faces appear, old ones vanish, and desire is forever renewed. In this light, even suffering takes on a new clarity. Why must woman endure the pain of childbirth, the long nights of care, the endless worries of motherhood? Why must her life be tied so closely to the fragile existence of others? Because the will does not care for her comfort. It cares only that life continues. She becomes its servant, bearing burdens heavier than man's, yet receiving no true compensation. Nature whispers no thanks, no consolation. Her sacrifice is taken as a matter of course, because without it, the species would falter. Thus, she is both exalted as mother and consumed as instrument. The paradox grows sharper. Woman embodies strength through suffering, yet is treated as weak. She is praised for beauty, yet beauty betrays her by fading. She is worshipped as muse, yet her own creations are dismissed. She is sought after with fervor, yet discarded with indifference. What explains these contradictions, if not the will, which uses her form as a lure, her endurance as a tool, her entire being as a means toward an end she did not choose? Here, other thinkers enter the stage for contrast. Nietzsche, intoxicated by life, praised woman as the eternal seductress, the playful chaos that lures man into becoming. He admired her as the power that keeps the wheel of existence turning. But in this admiration lurks the same blindness. He mistook the compulsion of the will for a dance of freedom. Kierkegaard, more melancholic, saw in woman the object of despairing love, the beloved whose presence both exalts and condemns. Yet even he stopped short of seeing that this despair is not personal but metaphysical. Freud, centuries after me, would strip away the masks further, speaking of unconscious drives and instincts, of libido directing our choices beneath awareness. But all of these, though they spoke in different tongues, echoed what I had already revealed, that man and woman alike are marionettes of a power indifferent to their suffering. Look closely at the courtship rituals, the endless dances of attraction, jealousy, passion, betrayal. Do they not resemble the rituals of animals in the forest, adorned and disguised, competing, choosing, mating, abandoning? We cover them with poetry, with etiquette, with ceremonies, but the essence remains the same. A peacock spreads his feathers. A man recites his verses. A bird chooses a nest with care. A woman seeks security. Beneath the human theater lies the same primitive force, commanding the same blind obedience. This is why the tragedy of love is so universal. Lovers swear eternity, but eternity lasts only until the will is satisfied. Once the child is conceived, or once the illusion fades, love evaporates like smoke. The passion that seemed infinite becomes irritation, boredom, indifference. Each lover asks, "How could I have been so deceived?" Yet it was no mere deception of the mind. It was the will itself speaking through them, and when its purpose was served, it withdrew its fire. Thus, the phenomenon of woman, when analyzed in its essence, is nothing less than the most transparent expression of the will's tyranny. She is both its instrument and its victim, both powerful and powerless, both worshipped and discarded. To call this a role would be too mild. It is a fate inscribed into the very structure of existence. Woman does not merely live within the world. She bears the world in her body. She is not merely subject to suffering. She is made into its vessel. And yet, through all this, she endures because endurance is what the will requires of her. And so, the deeper truth comes into view. Man may delude himself with dreams of conquest. Woman may console herself with dreams of love. But behind both dreams is the same indifferent force, using them for ends beyond their awareness. The brutal truth about women is not that they are flawed, nor that they are angels, but that in them we see most clearly how little the individual matters, how much the species demands, and how mercilessly the will consumes those who serve it. We have torn the veil and stepped beneath the surface. The phenomena of beauty, desire, devotion, sacrifice, all these shimmer-like reflections upon water. But beneath them runs the dark current of necessity, the will, indifferent to the individual, merciless in its command. To understand woman is not to speak of her virtues or her defects. It is to see how the will has written its law into her body and soul, making her both vessel and victim, strength and sacrifice. The will speaks to man as restless desire, as ceaseless striving, as conquest and pursuit. He lives in an unending storm of ambitions that never satisfy, and within that storm, sexual desire burns brightest. It is the most cunning trap, the most irresistible illusion. A man may resist wealth, may renounce power, may endure hunger, but seldom can he escape the compulsion of attraction. And when he imagines himself conqueror, in truth he is conquered, dragged forward by forces older than thought. The will speaks to woman differently. Her role is not the reckless pursuit of external objects, but the patient endurance of necessity. Her body testifies monthly to her bondage. Her youth is transformed into a brief blaze of allure, after which the burden of care, of childbearing, of sacrifice takes hold. She is bound to life more immediately, more physically than man. If he is intoxicated with illusions, she is weighted with reality. Her suffering is deeper, yet her strength of endurance is greater. The tragedy is that neither man nor woman acts freely. Each believes themselves choosing, yet both are chosen. Each imagines they love, yet both are compelled. For the beloved appears to the lover as if she were unique, irreplaceable, the one being whose presence can redeem life. But what is she in truth? A configuration of traits that signal fertility, health, the promise of children. The lover's agony, his jealousy, his exaltation, these are not for her as a person, but for the possibility she represents to the will. Likewise, her affection, her devotion, her patience are not purely for him, but for the instinct that demands continuity, that drives her to secure the safety of her offspring. Beauty reveals this most cruelly. Man praises beauty as though it were a divine radiance, a reflection of the eternal. Yet what is beauty but a code written in flesh, a signal to the senses? Symmetry, youth, freshness, these whisper to man of health and reproduction. He kneels before beauty as before a goddess, but the goddess is nature itself, laughing at his devotion. Woman, exalted for her beauty, suffers most from its impermanence. She is praised in youth, forgotten in age, for society values not her individuality but her service to the will. Thus, beauty, which should have been her gift, becomes her tyrant. Here lies the paradox. Woman is praised as delicate, yet she endures burdens heavier than man's. She is called weak, yet she survives pain, sacrifice, and neglect with a strength he cannot match. She is idealized as muse, yet denied as creator. She is sought with passion, then abandoned with indifference. These contradictions are not accidents of history. They are the expression of the will itself, which uses her allure to ensnare man, then uses her endurance to perpetuate the species. Other thinkers have touched these truths, though in different guises. Nietzsche, intoxicated by the play of power, admired woman as chaos, as temptation, as the force that drives man beyond himself. Yet in this admiration lies the same blindness. He mistook compulsion for dance. Kierkegaard, trembling before despair, saw love as both salvation and torment. But he confined his analysis to the sphere of faith and subjectivity. Freud, centuries later, would speak of libido, of unconscious instincts, and in this he approached closest to the truth, but clothed in the jargon of science what I had already unveiled: that man and woman are slaves of a force they neither understand nor control. Look then at the courtship rituals of humanity. Beneath poetry and etiquette, what are they but the same displays seen in the animal world? The stag battles his rival, the man duels or conspires. The bird builds a nest, the man offers wealth, stability, a name. The peacock spreads his feathers. The woman adorns herself with dress, perfume, gesture. We flatter ourselves with the illusion of sophistication, but the essence is unchanged. It is the will rehearsing its same command generation after generation. This is why love is never innocent. Lovers swear eternity, but eternity lasts only until the will has achieved its aim. Passion blazes, consumes, then dies. The lovers, who once swore their union was divine, now look upon each other with indifference, irritation, or contempt. They ask themselves, how could I have been so deceived? And yet, it was not deception of the mind, it was the will itself burning through them. And when it withdrew, nothing remained but ashes. Thus, the deeper truth stands revealed. Woman, more than man, embodies the visible tyranny of the will. For man may distract himself with ambition, with war, with art, with politics. He may forget for a time his bondage. But woman cannot forget. Her body reminds her at every turn. Her life is tied more closely to the rhythms of birth, care, sacrifice. She is the clearer mirror of the will's indifference, and through her suffering we glimpse the law that binds us all. The brutal truth about women is therefore not a list of faults nor of virtues. It is the revelation that in her we see the individual reduced most plainly to the instrument of the species. She is exalted, burdened, used, discarded, and yet she endures, because endurance is the law of her being. And what is man in this? No more free, no less enslaved. He is dragged by desire, deceived by beauty, consumed by passion, and in the end, left empty. Both are puppets, the strings pulled by a hand they cannot see. The will uses them and throws them aside, and the game begins anew. So, when we gaze upon the figure of woman, let us see not angel nor demon, not ideal nor weakness, but the face of necessity itself. She is the form in which life most clearly declares, you are not free. You are not your own. You are my instrument. And in this revelation lies both tragedy and clarity. The deeper nature exposed, we now turn to its disguises. For the will, cunning as it is blind, knows that its commands would be unbearable if revealed naked. Thus it cloaks them in myths, customs, traditions, and ideals. The figure of woman, who is the most visible vessel of this compulsion, becomes in every age surrounded by symbols, exaltations, condemnations, so many masks concealing the same necessity. In ancient times, woman was deified. She appeared as Isis in Egypt, as Demeter in Greece, as Cybele in Phrygia. She was the goddess of fertility, the eternal mother, the womb of the world. Peoples bowed before her, offered sacrifices, carved temples in her honor. Yet what was this divinity but recognition of her reproductive power? She was worshipped because she bore life, because without her, the tribe would wither. Her divinity was her function, her sacredness was her utility. Behind the hymns to the goddess stood the same law, the will demanding continuation. In the Middle Ages, the pendulum swung. Woman became the virgin, the saint, the pure vessel of divine grace. She was elevated to an ethereal plane, adored by knights in the rituals of chivalry, sung in troubadours' verses. But here again, what was the essence? She was exalted precisely because she was inaccessible, because her body was veiled, her sexuality contained. Man knelt before her, but it was a kneeling that preserved the social order, ensuring desire was bound by rules, by property, by inheritance. Chivalry, far from being love, was discipline. The lady was the emblem of restraint, the mask of desire regulated by society. And in modern times, what has changed? Woman, once goddess, once saint, is now commodity. She is plastered on advertisements, paraded on screens, her image sold to awaken desire in order to sell objects. The cult of beauty becomes industry, her allure becomes currency, yet the essence remains the same. She is used as lure, as bait, as symbol. Whether as goddess, muse, virgin, or advertisement, she is pressed into the service of the will, which laughs behind every mask. Even psychology, that new priesthood of the modern age, has not freed her. It analyzes her desires, her neuroses, her instincts, but always returns to the same reduction. She is object of desire. Whether in myth, in romance, in religion, or in science, she is never allowed simply to exist as herself. She is always function, symbol, mirror of man's longing or of the species' necessity. And here lies her deepest tragedy. She bears not only her own suffering, but also the projections of the entire world. She is at once goddess and whore, muse and monster, virgin and mother, commodity and idol. In all these guises, she is imprisoned by illusions she did not weave. And yet, she endures them, as she endures all things, because endurance is the strength the will has given her. The stage has grown darker, and we have seen enough of the masquerade, the illusions of romance, the chains of necessity, the sacrifices demanded by life, all stand exposed. The will speaks through every glance, every passion, every ritual, and neither man nor woman escapes its tyranny. But must we remain its helpless captives? Is there no way to step aside, even for a moment, from this blind compulsion that drives us like cattle to the yoke? The truth is merciless. The will cannot be destroyed, nor can its commands be silenced. Yet in certain rare intervals, in flashes of clarity, we glimpse the possibility of detachment. Not freedom in the vulgar sense, not liberation as escape, but release through recognition and inward turning away, a refusal to be deceived by the masks. In these moments, the compulsion loosens, and what remains is a quiet stillness that does not strive. This is the path that leads, if not to happiness, then at least to clarity. The first step is independent thought. To think for oneself is already an act of rebellion against the will's disguise. The majority live within illusions, repeating phrases inherited from society. Love as destiny, beauty as virtue, marriage as fulfillment. They chant what has been given to them, never daring to examine the machinery behind the words. But to think independently is to strip away these borrowed voices, to see with naked eyes what lies beneath. It is not a comforting vision, but a sobering one. And yet, in this very sobriety lies the seed of liberation. For once you know that passion is compulsion, that beauty is necessity, that devotion is instinct, you are less likely to be dragged helplessly into the abyss. But thought alone cannot silence the will. The intellect is servant to desire, and even the wisest philosopher is still pierced by longing. Thus, art offers a second path, one that suspends desire by transforming it into contemplation. When one gazes upon a painting, listens to music, reads a poem not as a lover or consumer, but as a pure beholder, one ceases, for a moment, to strive. The individual vanishes, the will grows silent, and only the timeless form remains. In art, even the image of woman can be freed from compulsion. She is no longer lure or commodity, but symbol, expression, essence. The nude in marble, the Madonna on canvas, the tragic heroine in drama, these are not objects of desire, but reflections of truth, mirrors of suffering, emblems of endurance. Through art, woman transcends the tyranny of the will, and through her image, so does the beholder. Yet art too is fleeting. It grants intervals of stillness, not deliverance. To live without cruelty, one must go further to compassion. For when the veil is torn away, one sees not only the illusions of romance, but also the immense burden of suffering that weighs upon all beings, and perhaps most visibly upon women. To look upon her with true clarity is not to see temptation or rival, idol or victim, but a fellow sufferer, bound like oneself to the same merciless law. Compassion arises when one recognizes the common fate of all, that we are puppets of the will, struggling in vain, enduring what we did not choose. In compassion, one ceases to see others as means, and begins to feel them as companions in affliction. This too weakens the grip of desire, for desire feeds upon illusion, and illusion cannot survive when pierced by recognition of suffering. Yet even compassion does not silence the will completely. It softens its edges, it mitigates cruelty, but the striving persists. The highest path, then, lies in renunciation. Not renunciation in the sense of hatred, nor in the sense of flight, but in the quiet refusal to be deceived. It is the turning away from intoxication, the refusal of the bait. It is the monk withdrawing from worldly desire, the philosopher declining the theater of romance, the ascetic resting in the solitude where striving no longer reaches. To renounce is to look life in the face and say, I know your game and I will not play it. And yet, renunciation does not mean contempt for woman. On the contrary, in her, the cruelty of the will is revealed most starkly. To renounce is to free her from illusions too, to cease demanding of her what nature has already demanded more mercilessly. It is to recognize her not as goddess or temptress, but as a fellow prisoner. She is not to be condemned for the illusion she embodies, nor exalted as a savior, but seen in her naked truth, as one who suffers, as one who endures, as one who bears the species upon her back. Here, then, is the path of liberation. Thought that pierces illusion, art that suspends desire, compassion that unites in suffering, and renunciation that withdraws from the game. None of these grant happiness, for happiness is the will's bait. They grant something rarer, clarity, tranquility, and the quiet dignity of one who no longer believes the lies. And what remains after renunciation? Only stillness, a fading of striving, a silence where the will's voice is no longer heard. Woman, once the eternal lure, becomes instead the eternal mirror, reflecting to man the truth of existence, showing him the chains he wears, and by that very revelation, pointing him toward detachment. So we arrive, at last, not at triumph, but at silence. The masks have been stripped away. Romance, beauty, devotion, sacrifice, all revealed as disguises of the same ancient compulsion. Woman, more clearly than man, embodies the merciless logic of life, to endure, to bear, to suffer, to continue. In her, the will declares itself with brutal clarity. She is not angel, not demon, not savior, not curse, she is necessity incarnate. And through her we see how little freedom the individual truly possesses. The brutal truth about women, then, is not a judgment against them, but a revelation of life itself. For woman is not apart from man, nor opposed to him. She is his mirror, his counterpart, his fellow victim. Both are pressed into service, both are consumed, both are abandoned when the will has had its use. Their quarrels, their romances, their tragedies are surface foam upon an ocean whose depths are dark and indifferent. And yet, how desperately humanity clings to its illusions. Lovers swear eternity, though eternity dissolves at the first quarrel. Poets sing of beauty, though beauty fades before their verses dry. Societies exalt the mother, yet leave her to suffer alone. Religions sanctify the virgin, yet despise the flesh from which she is born. Everywhere contradiction, everywhere illusion. And beneath it all, the same command: live, reproduce, continue. What remains once the illusions are seen? For some, despair a collapse into bitterness, cynicism, or cruelty. But despair, too, is the will in disguise, for it still clings to the wish for what cannot be: freedom, happiness, fulfillment. For others, recognition a quiet turning inward, the acceptance of suffering as the texture of existence, the loosening of desire's grip. It is not joy that arises from this recognition, but something colder, calmer, perhaps nobler: detachment. And what of woman herself? Once stripped of myth and mask, she stands revealed not as weakness, but as strength. The strength of endurance, of sacrifice, of bearing life despite indifference, of suffering without applause. Her truth is not the sentimental lies sung by poets, nor the contempt hurled by cynics, but the harder truth of being pressed more intimately into the machinery of existence. If there is brutality here, it is not hers, but the brutality of the will that uses her as its chosen instrument. So let us end where we began, with a question that unsettles rather than soothes. When you next gaze upon the face of a woman, whether adorned with youth, marked by motherhood, or etched with age, what do you see? Do you see a person, free, sovereign, self-possessed? Or do you see the mask of necessity, the hand of the will reaching through her features to command your desire, your devotion, your illusion? Do you love her, or do you serve life itself? Perhaps you will look away, preferring the comfort of illusion. Most do. They continue to worship, to pursue, to suffer, to repeat the cycle, unwilling to confront the merciless truth. But for those who can endure the sight, who can stare into the face of necessity without flinching, a different silence arises, the silence of recognition, of detachment, of resignation. And in that silence, perhaps, lies the only freedom that life permits.